Folks, welcome back to Talking Soccer, and boy, do we have a lot of soccer to talk tonight. Let's talk about the Leagues Cup. It's what has become a mercurially chaotic tournament, and tonight's round of 16 matches did nothing to beat the charges, let's say. 5 matches tonight, only one of those matches is decided by anything that wasn't a last-minute goal. LAFC beat Real Salt Lake 4-0, and we will start there because LAFC, let's talk about it. They are finally looking like they are kind of back to their championship self. They had this lull after the Champions League that, has kind of become a trope at this point, that teams that go through CONCACAF Champions League, especially at the start of the season, tend to kind of play worn out the rest of the year. However, this break kind of comes at the right time. LAFC, with their championship, they are allowed a bye through the group stage. So they get that time to refresh, to recharge, and it was clearly the best thing for them because they've come into their first 2 knockout stage matches and have just ran right through their opponents, winning this one 4-0 over Real Salt Lake. Denny Bouanga having 2 goals. This comes after their 7-1 win over Juarez last week. And it's potentially a worrying sign for the rest of MLS. Now, of course, they have a few more wins to get to the final, but looking ahead, I think everyone that sees this performance now would want to see an Inter Miami LAFC final because of how Messi is playing, because of how that team is looking. Last place against first place team, of course, that's not true. But I think that's going to be interesting too, because Inter Miami, of course, you have to kind of throw anything that happened pre-Messi out the window because it's just not the same team, but they had dug themselves a pretty heavy hole that they needed to dig out of. So that makes it interesting because it isn't just a team with the best player in the world, with all these levels of talent, with all this talent that is going to be able to make a run of the league, but there's also that added stressor of will they have enough time, enough matches to pull it off and get into the playoffs. That's what makes this is going to be such a fascinating rest of the season. Okay, so we don't need to talk about that the rest of this video. Let's talk about the rest of these games tonight. Monterrey and Tigres was the only other match that wasn't decided in penalties, and this one was decided by a penalty in the 97th minute. Monterrey are given a pen. Sergio Canales steps up and just easily sends the keeper the wrong way and slots it in. And this was another one of those matches where it's two ligamx teams playing this rivalry match on U.S. soil. None of them have been home in a month. And it's still fascinating that the intensity is still there. And you could still feel, now I think a lot of that is, there is still crowd support, right? So they're not playing in an empty stadium necessarily, but it was, I just think that whole aspect of the tournament is fascinating. It's not something I want to see going forward. Next year at the Leagues Cup, I would love to have a tournament where the Mexican teams were able to host as well. I think that would take a lot of the kind of weirdness of, and the asterisk of these teams not allowed to go home. I think that plays into, not to say that these teams aren't comfortable, because I think the what we've seen from the reports is none of these teams are necessarily complaining about things outside of the travel. When Club América were in St. Louis, that was a big talking point, which is how they were, urging other MLS teams, but kind of leading by example to, I think the way Bradley Carnell put it was to be a good host. And yeah, I think it's part of that. It's part of seeing the kind of diaspora support that you still have everywhere. I mean, Club América especially is probably bigger than every MLS team outside of, I can't even go there. I think they are the largest supported team in North America. I think that's pretty safe to say in any country. So to see that, it makes these environments so interesting. And then to have this late drama, it just adds to so much of the mystique and the aura around this tournament so far. That's what happens when you get such a level of not just competitiveness, but pride. And I talked about this in a piece I wrote for St. Louis Magazine. So it's going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but stick with me. I promise it'll be worth it. So for the Club América game in St. Louis, I talked with Estiel Santos, which is St. Louis's Spanish language supporter group. And the kind of real key to the story was how important it was for them as Spanish speakers, as Latin Americans, to be able to celebrate Latino culture while also supporting your city and your club. And when I talked to Carlos, who's president of Santos, he was sure to mention to me that they had Club América supporters in the supporters group, and they knew people from their group that were sitting in the crowd as an America supported that match. And it just shows the diaspora that everyone who has an immigration story always has, this tough story. And that's why it's so important to stay in touch with their roots. And that's why these teams have such a strong fanaticism. What am I trying to say? Strong support. Okay. I was trying to get poetic with it, but it's just not going to work here. So strong support. And it's very interesting when you see kind of how ardent the support is in America for these teams. It's very eye-opening to me as someone who, obviously, I've watched ligamx, and I've been to U.S.-Mexico games before, so I know what the Mexican fan base is like in Mexico, and of course here in the U.S. when the U.S. national team plays. But to see the level of support for their club teams is well different, especially the split of fans that they have in each city, I think is fascinating. But anyway, that's a diatribe that didn't need to be said, but here we are. So let's move on. Toluca and Minnesota United. Now we're getting into 3 matches, all congruently being decided by penalties. Minnesota United go up 2-0, and then I think that's what makes this game so interesting too, is that they go full Minnesota sports here. They give up their 2-0 lead. It's going to go to penalties, and then they're just going to make 4 straight penalties, which is very unlike Minnesota sports to come back from the soul-crushing giving away of the game, grasping defeat from the jaws of victory. But then they grasped it right back. And the other important thing with this matchup, Bongokuhle Hlongwane scored his 7th goal of the tournament, tying Lionel Messi for the Golden Boot race. And it's very refreshing to see. It's very, very MLS thing to see that Lionel Messi is competing with Bongo for who can win the Golden Boot of the Leagues Cup. And quite frankly, I'm happy for Bongo. So you also have the Union versus the New York Red Bulls. This goes to penalties after it was 1-1. Philadelphia Union go down 1 early. They had to come back and draw it, and then they're going to win penalties after I think they won their previous 10 matches against the Red Bulls. So finally, the match that everyone came to this video to see, Club América take on Nashville in Nashville. And this game was a chess match. This was a fun watch from start to finish, because even when it was 0-0 through the first 60 minutes, it was still 2 opposing styles, both playing good soccer. And watching America move the ball, the way they can just ping around you and just fluidly move up and down the pitch, it's a joy to watch when they're playing like that. So let's talk about the game, though. Walker Zimmerman in the 61st minute sends home an emphatic header that at the time really seemed like the clinching goal. That seemed like the most important moment of this match. There had been chances back and forth, but it really was starting to feel like, with the weight of the chances, that the next one was going to be the only one. So Walker Zimmerman scores in the 61st minute, and it feels so momentous because it feels like this is going to be the end of the game here. But then when Club América are able to fight back and are able to find some chances and really set up corners and set up free kicks, Diego Valdez is able to kind of send home his own emphatic header in the 78th minute. Then it's 1-1 going into deep into this game. And then we get into stoppage time. It's still 1-1. And there's a play in the box. I forget which Nashville defender it is. Turns his body. He's going to hit it with his hand. And this takes an eternity to review. And I don't understand why. Because from a naked eye, before he even goes to VAR, you can tell that goes off his hand. So then the question is it an unnatural movement, right? And it really seems like it's a no-brainer, especially when they show on the broadcast that they have that camera behind the goal where you can see the exact angle that the ball hits his hand. So now you're looking at, where is he positioned? What was the movement? But it took about 5 minutes for this VAR to actually, or the ref to actually agree with VAR, let's just say. VAR, whatever the terminology that we want to use. So Julian Quinones sets up, easily slots it home past Joe Willis, and it looks like Club América have done it. They have grabbed a victory, but remember those 5 minutes I talked about with VAR, because Sam Surridge, the fresh transfer from Nottingham Forest, is going to rise up, get on the end of a beautiful Henning Mukhtar volley in that he just kind of drew the America defense, bided his time for Surridge or whoever was going to be the late arriver, and the ball rose. Surridge put it in, and that was the final kick of the game. It's drawn 2-2 after entering stoppage time 1-1, and we are going to go to penalty kicks. And this is where the drama amps up, because not only was there a crazy amount of drama in this, but it went 7 rounds. And in the 6th round, Jack Mayer steps up. It's 5-4. He has to make this for it to go an extra round or else Club América win. He kicks it, and it's saved. And that should be it. That should be Club América victory. Fans rush onto the field. Security guards hurt themselves, it looks like, trying to chase after fans. They wouldn't show it on the cameras, but you could see the medical teams rushing in with the stretcher. So somebody was getting stretchered off from this people running after other people. Now, a lot of these are kids, but there were some adults in there too. And I don't know. They're going to make a big deal about that because it's been happening everywhere Club América play, and I think it's just has to do with the security and MLS stadiums not being great, but also it's fucking kids going for autographs. Well, how mad can you get about that? I'm not gonna crutch a kid's dream, let's just say. So Luis Malagán makes the save, but after all this, 5 minutes have passed, and all of a sudden you're noticing that Nashville's still on the pitch. What's happening here? Why haven't they left yet? And the refs are kind of gathered over. Then you see word comes down that VAR is looking at whether Malagán had been off his line or not. So the wild thing is that the refs had already shaken people's hands. They've gone through all this post-game pomp and circumstance, but Malagán was absolutely off his line. There's a picture from before the kick was taken. He was just never on his line to begin with. So they retake it after a lengthier process, and the process was more about getting the people that weren't supposed to be on the pitch off the pitch and getting everyone kind of back in their spots, which obviously at that point it was pandemonium had broken loose. Jack Mayer sets back up, redeems himself, makes the second penalty, goes one more round, Club América player misses, and Jonathan Dos Santos misses too. That's big, right? Jonathan Dos Santos misses, Dan Lovitz comes in, hits the final penalty, and that's it. That's the win. And understandably, Club América team, players, fans are all a little bit upset after, accepting the victory, right? If you're as a fan, if you're looking at that and you're like, okay, we won, and that's in your brain, 10 minutes have passed, and now it's not. That's never easy to admit to. And as a fan, we are all a little bit irrational when it comes to our teams as well. But it's pretty clear from the picture that his heels were off the line when Mayer stepped up to take it. So VAR looked at it. Obviously, that's a retaken pen. Nashville end up winning it and are on to the round of 8. And that's the Leagues Cup, baby. What a competition. What a couple of countries. What a region. This is what we have coming up. So Friday, Inter Miami play Charlotte. Los Angeles LAFC play Monterrey. Minnesota United play Nashville, and then the Union play Querétaro, and that is your final 8. 2 Liga MX teams, 6 MLS teams for a chance in the semifinal and a chance at the final. I think for me as a neutral, I either want to see Inter Miami and LAFC, or I want to see Monterrey upset LAFC and then a Monterrey Miami final. I think that makes sense for me as a neutral. I want to see a Liga MX team in the final. I don't want to watch another MLS match, and I would like to see this refueled LAFC team with a Miami team that has kind of passed all the tests so far and have played in some close games and come off the other side as victors. I think that would be an interesting matchup. But let me know what you thought about these games down in the comments as usual. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I've been Justin Horniker. Give me a thumbs up. If you like my video, give me a subscribe. If you like talking soccer with me. And folks, we will talk very soon.